Okay, in this lesson on dot plots, I am looking at 17.3 and page 609. We're going to learn how to create a dot plot. So you have a set of data that you need to put, and a dot plot is a graph that shows the frequency or how often that data occurs along a number line. So we're going to be putting this along a number line, and when we're done, we'll talk about why it's such a good way to view data. And data is information written in numbers. Here's an example. Scott is training a half marathon. He recorded the distances he ran in a table. He uses the data in the table to make a dot plot. So right here are all the distances that he ran, and you want to make sure you understand what he does. So he ran one day 4 miles, 8 miles, 8 miles, 7 miles, and so on. Now you order the data from least to greatest. Okay, so basically you find your smallest number in your largest, and they've already started for us. So here we have 4 on there twice, and then we have a 5, and there's 2 of them. I don't see 6, but I do see 7. I see 1, 2, 3 7s. 1, 2, 3 8s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 9s. Now, you're going to draw a number line, label it with the distances, write the title below the number line, and describe the data. So we're going to do this together here, but we're going to label the distances on the number line from the least value of the data to the greatest value, and the points for this dot plot will be 4, 5. So what you're doing is you are finding your smallest number and your largest number, and you are putting everything in between it. Even though I don't have the 6 up here, I want it on a number line because a dot plot is a piece of a number line. You're taking a segment of a number line out and you're putting all the numbers in there. That's going to be key on some of your questions that you're going to have. Your number line has to have even if there's no dots on it, or if there's no data for 6 up here, but I need to write it because it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's all the pieces from the largest to the smallest. So then down here, step 2, it says represent the data value, place 2 dots above the 4 on the number line to show how many times Scott ran that distance. Complete the dot plot by placing the correct dots above the distances on the number line. The hardest thing about a dot plot is making sure that your first dots are about the same length across and your second dots. But you make your number line down below, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And so that's the distances that he ran in miles. Okay, and it's in miles. Now each dot is going to represent, and you need to know this when you're reading them, miles he ran in 1 day. So if I look up here, he ran 2 times, 2 different times. That's why they have 2. 5, 7, he ran 7 miles on 3 different days. So do you see how you try to make them even there? 8, he did 3 different days. 1, 2, that one's a little bit better. 3, and 9, 1, 2, 3. Whoops, I did that wrong. I put it on the 6. I am so sorry. I'm just getting in a hurry here. Let me get my white out here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you make yours. Hopefully. Oh. I don't have my white out handy, but pretend Mrs. Witt did not make that mistake. Okay, I do make mistakes a lot of times sometimes. Anyway, so here's the dot plot. And what I notice about a dot plot is it makes it easy for me to read. Instead of looking at all of these numbers at one time, especially if there was a lot more, I can see that he ran 9 miles a day on most days. The fewest miles he ran in a day were 4 miles. And he only did that twice, okay? So that kind of explains why dot plots are a useful way to organize and present data. They make the data there, it makes it's easy to read. You can find the most and least easily. It's kind of like a bar graph. It just makes it easy like a bar graph. Okay. Now turn to the next page that you have, and that would be 17.4, and this is actually using dot plots. You can use dot plots to organize data to make visual. It makes the data visually easier to read. So the whole purpose of it is to make your information easier to read. Pause this video at any time and go back, and you can listen to that again. So here we're learning how to read a dot plot. Now, reading a dot plot, it's really important that you pay attention to the labels. You've got to know what the number line represents, and you have to know what each dot represents. So the dot plot shows the links of the buttons in Jen's collection for an art project. She wants to know how many buttons are in her collection are longer than 1/4. How can she use the dot plot to find her answer? So here's the thing, I have to understand this. This is a dot plot, and these are her button lengths in inches, okay? So she has buttons that are a 1/4 inch long, anywhere from a 1/4 inch long to 1 whole, because that's 4/4. So in my class, if we see 4/4, we put a 1 around it. So 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and a whole. And it tells us that each dot stands for one button. If it doesn't, you need to label it, because it'll tell you in the reading of the problem. You will know, you'll have to identify what the dots represent. So I like how they label this, and my students will be labeling both things. They will tell what the number line says, and they will also tell what the dots represent. And I know Miss Fuller does the same for her students. Each dot stands for one button. So if I counted up all of these dots, that's how many buttons that she looked at, or that she has in her collection. And the fractions show the length of the button. So down here, one button, it has a length of 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. Okay? We're going to count the number of dots above each of the button lengths on the dot plot. There are blank dots above 1/4. There are 3. So she has 3 buttons that are a 1/4 inch long. She has 4 buttons that are a 1/2 inch long, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons that are 3/4 inch long, and 3 buttons that are exactly an inch long. Since you are trying to find the number of buttons that have a length greater than, because up here in the question, she wants to know how many buttons in our collection are longer than 1/4. 1/4. It says longer, not also equal to. It just says longer. So it's got to be bigger than 1/4. If it said equal to 1/4, then we would include the 1/4, but it doesn't. So we're looking for, when I visually looked, I just separated that in my eyes. Greater than 1/4, count the number of dots above the other fractions to find your answer. So we're looking for, we know 1/2 is bigger than 1/4, so we're going to look at everything above that's greater. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 buttons in her collection are longer than 1/4 of an inch. Now, you can also answer questions here. How many buttons does she have in her collection? Well, if I know that's 12 and 3, you have to count all these up. If we understand that each dot represents a button. So that'd be 15 buttons. Okay. How many buttons are less than 3/4 of an inch? So we're not going to include the 3/4 because it says less than, unless it asks us to include it. And it doesn't. It says less than a 3/4. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And the last question, what is the difference in the length between the longest button? Now here's where they try to trick you. The lengths of the buttons are the number line. The longest button is 4/4, is 1 hole. And the shortest button is only 1/4. So it's not how many buttons are long minus how many buttons are short, but it's the longest, the difference between the lengths, okay? That's where they try to trick you. That's why you really need to know the title and what the dots stand for. And then subtract, we know how to subtract fractions, subtract the numerators. We get 4 minus 1 is 3, and the denominator stays the same. Okay. There's a great lesson on Khan Academy also on dot plots and reading them and creating them. So use these resources to help you answer your questions on your worksheet.